الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. We're just going to take around half an hour. We're not going to go all the way until the Asr time. But about half an hour, inshaAllah ta'ala, we're going to finish what we covered with regard to Fiqh as-Sawm. So I wanted to make a small correction to what we said last time. I don't know if it's a correction or a clarification, because I looked back at what I said and I'm not sure if it was very clear or not. People asked, do I have to give the poor person a specific amount of food? And I said, you need to give them a meal, right? However, there's a difference in two things. I didn't explain it. If you're giving ready-made cooked food, or you're giving just like a bag of dried rice, like uncooked rice. If you're giving a bag of uncooked rice, it has to be nisf sa', half a sa'. If you're just giving ready-made food, there's no measure. Then you give like whatever you're going to give you, some rice, some meat, or some lentils, or some bread, or some, and you give them a meal. And that meal doesn't have a limit. There's no specific amount for it. Just that you give them a meal that would be a normal meal to you and to me, a meal that we would have. But if you're giving them dried food for them to cook and eat later, then you need to give them at least nisfu sa'. So that's just a bit of clarification based on what we said last time. طيب. What I wanted to talk to you about today is the things which take away from the reward of the fasting. And we need to understand that these things can be very serious indeed. The Prophet ﷺ said, رُبَّ صَائِمٍ حَظُّهُ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ الْجُوعِ وَالْعَطَشِ وَرُبَّ قَائِمٍ حَظُّهُ مِنْ قِيَامِهِ السَّهَرِ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, perhaps a fasting person only gets hunger and thirst from their fast, and perhaps a person standing in prayer only gets the fact that they stayed awake. The only thing they got out of it was that they stayed awake, nothing else. So this tells us that the fast has, if we want to call it munaqqisat, things that take away from the reward of the fast, just like it has mubtilat or mufattirat, the things that break the fast and invalidate it. So if we talk about the things which take away from the fast, first of all, what we have to speak about is the issue of intention, and that is something which can completely ruin a person's deeds, and that it has to be sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And anything that's not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah Azza wa Jal will not accept it. We know the famous hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he narrated from Allah Azza wa Jal, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَنَا أَغْنَى الشُّرَكَاءَ عَنِ الشِّرْكِ مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلًا أَشْرَكَ فِيهِ مَعِيَ غَيْرِي تَرَكْتُهُ وَشِرْكَهُ. I'm the least in need of anyone for a partner to be made with me. And no one is more free of needing a partner than Allah. Whoever does an action in which they associate others with me in it, I will abandon them and I'll abandon their action. So that tells us that the person will not get any reward at all. And that's the most extreme example of someone who got nothing except hunger and thirst from their fasting, because it was not sincere for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they got nothing at all from their standing except for staying awake and being tired, and that was because it wasn't sincere for Allah. But that's not the main topic today. Today we're going to talk about the things that take away from the ajr. Now when we're talking about taking away from the ajr, taking away from the reward, we're talking about something which the fast counts as a fast. يعني الصوم يجزئه ذلك اليوم. يعني he got the reward of, he got not the reward, he got that he fasted. He doesn't have to make up another day. فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. He doesn't make up any more days. But he didn't get rewarded from it. So take the issue of al-ijza and the issue of al-ajr and separate them. The issue of when do you count as fasting? And when is it that you get rewarded? So for example, as an example, let's take the reverse. A woman is fasting until half an hour before Maghrib. She does her fast. And then she breaks her fast because of the monthly cycle. She's rewarded, but the fast doesn't count. She's rewarded for her efforts and she gets a big ajr from Allah because she followed the rules and she did what she was told, but she doesn't get that day, doesn't count for her. فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. She has to bring another day in its place. But she got rewarded for her efforts. We're now looking at the other way around. Someone who يُجْزِئُهُ ذَلِكَ الْيَوْمِ, he got the reward of that day, the fast got counted for that day, وَلَكِنْ لَيْسَ لَهُ أَجْرٌ. But he didn't get any reward for it. He didn't get rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He fasted, tick, but he didn't get rewarded. So separate those two. So we're looking at what reduces the reward or what removes the reward. The first hadith that we're going to look at is a statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam: "Man lam yada' qawl az-zur wal-'amal bihi wal-jahl, falaysa lillahi hajatun an yada'a ta'amahu wa sharabah." Whoever doesn't leave false witness and acting upon it, and al-jahl, ignorance and ignorant behavior, Allah has no need for him to leave his food and drink. This is a very powerful hadith. Because first of all, we understood that fasting is not leaving your food and drink. This is what we're talking now about, al-ijza. He gets the day he fasted, and he didn't eat, he didn't drink, he didn't break the fast in the ways that break it. But the point of his day, what was it? Was the purpose of his day to be hungry? Or was the purpose of his day to get near to Allah and to be rewarded? Allah doesn't need you to leave food and drink. فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ أَنْ يَدَعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. Allah doesn't need him to leave his food and drink. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants this person to gain the reward and the benefit of the fast, not just the fact that he fasted according to the most basic conditions. So three things are mentioned. قَوْلَ الزُّورِ. قول الزور is كبيرة من الكبائر. It's from the major sins, right? And قول الزور is false testimony. So included in that, in this hadith, is anything to do with false witness and false testimony, lying, cheating people, claiming what isn't yours. All of these come under قول الزور. So a person cheating other people, taking what isn't theirs, what they don't have a right to take, a person giving false witness and false testimony, all of these come under qawl az-zur. وَالْعَمَلَ بِهِ, acting upon it. Acting upon it. All of these actions, acting upon falsehood, comes under the topic of al-amal biqawl az-zur, acting upon a false testimony. Wal-jahl, behaving ignorantly towards other people. Al-jahl here in terms of your manners and your etiquettes. Behaving ignorantly towards other people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no need for this person to leave their food and drink. Does that mean that they don't fast? Or they fast. And they get the day counts for them, but they didn't get rewarded for the fasting that they did on that day. They didn't get rewarded for it. So here, some of them included in fi'l al-zur, doing acts of falsehood, they included in that the kaba'ir, in the actions in al-amal bi qawl al-zur. They included in it the kaba'ir and al-fahisha, doing immoral actions. So they included the actions of immorality and the major sins and al-fisq, open disobedience to Allah. They included that. As for al-jahl, al-jahl is to behave ignorantly and to transgress against other people. And from this is when we go out of the house and we say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika an udilla aw udal aw azilla aw uzal aw adrima aw udlam aw ajhala aw yujhala alayh. The last part. That I behave ignorantly or that someone else behaves like that towards me and transgress against someone with ignorance. And from this is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jalla, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين. Or you who believe, when there comes to an ignorant person with news, make sure of it so you don't you don't harm a people out of ignorance. So any kind of transgression against people, ignorant behavior from jahiliyyah, this also comes under the aqwal and af'al of jahiliyyah. The actions, statements and actions of jahiliyyah also come under what detracts from the fast. And from this specifically is the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hadith muttafaqun alayhi fi al-Bukhari wa Muslim, وعند بخاري عند البخاري ومسلم فإذا كان يوم صوم أحدكم فلا يرفث يومئذ ولا يسخب. That don't, al-rafath here, what it means in this hadith, because al-rafath came with two meanings. It came with the meaning of intimacy, like in the ayah, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. Rafath with your women is permissible in the night time of Ramadan. It came with that meaning. Like in here, فَلَا يَرْفَث, the meaning of فَلَا, the meaning of فَإِذَا كَانَ يَوْمَ صَوْمِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَلَا يَرْفَث. The meaning here of it is bad language. And as-sab, shatam, cursing, swearing, and this is all from al-rafath. فَلَا يَرْفُث يَوْمَئِذٍ وَلَا يَسْخَبْ. السَّخَبْ, don't let him get angry, don't let him, someone shouting at other people, getting angry with other people. فَإِنْ سَابَّهُ أَحَدٌ أَوْ قَاتَلَهُ فَلْيَقُلْ. But if someone curses him or tries to fight with him, let him say, إِنِّي امْرُؤٌ صَائِمٌ. I am a fasting person. إِنِّي امْرُؤٌ صَائِمٌ. I am a fasting person. So this tells us that when we are fasting, we're trying not to get angry with other people. We're trying not to be aggressive with other people. We're trying not to transgress against other people, to behave ignorantly towards other people, to curse other people, which all of these things we keep away from. We're trying not to do the kaba'ir, and from the kaba'ir is al-ghiba, wal-namima, telling lies and spreading rumors. This is from fi'l al-zur, doing the actions of al-zur, the actions of falsehood. Qawl al-zur, lying and cheating. All of these things are from the things which detract from a person's, detract from a person's fast. Al-ghadab, getting angry with people. And so a person, if they want to complete their fast in terms of the rules and regulations, it's not just avoiding food and drinking, the things which break the fast, but it's also about avoiding anger, cursing, swearing, bad language generally, al-jahl. And even, for example, sometimes it's not swearing, but it's just bad behavior towards people. Making fun of other people, lying about other people, all the things that I mentioned in Surah Al-Hujurat. The things like not committing ghiba, not making fun of each other. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم. Don't let a people make fun of another people thinking that they're better than them. ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكون خيرا منهن. And not women over other, making fun of other women. Perhaps one is better than the other in the sight of Allah. ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب. Don't make fun of each other, don't insult each other, don't call each other names. بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان. What a terrible thing it is to have the name fasiq after you were a person of Iman. And what a terrible thing it is. There's ikhtilaf in the ayah. And some of them said, what a terrible thing it is to call someone a fasiq. You need to say, ya fasiq, after you had been people of Iman. Like in al-Zahir min al-ayah, what is apparent is, what a terrible thing it is to be called a fasiq after you are a person of Iman. وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَنْ يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا فَكَرِهْتُمُوهُ. Don't backbite each other. Would one of you like to eat the flesh of his brother? You would hate it. All of these things come under قول الزور, فعل الزور, any false statements, false actions, and al-jahl, behaving ignorantly towards other people, and as-sab wa shatam, cursing people and shouting at people, wal-jahl, behaving ignorantly towards people and transgressing against them, sakhab, and becoming angry with people. All of these things are mentioned within the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ with regard to the things which reduce from the fast. And what is the solution when other people do it to you? So the solution when other people behave like that to you is to say, inni sa'im, inni sa'im. I'm fasting. Because I'm not just fasting from the things which make my fast valid, I'm fasting from the things which would reduce from my fast. Again, huna, there is an important distinction to make. And it's a very important one. The things which break the fast, mubtilatus, generally speaking, become permissible when the evening comes. أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةَ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى نِسَائِكُمْ. Permissible is it for you to have intimacy in the night time in Ramadan. And what was haram in the daytime became halal. The food, فَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا. Eat and drink. حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. Until the white thread of dawn becomes clear from the black thread of the night. So they became permissible. Like in the things that take away from the ajr of the sawm, did they become permissible at Maghrib? La. They don't become halal at Maghrib. And it doesn't become halal to backbite and halal to lie and halal. Like in the difference is the person who does it in... Here's a mas'ala we should talk about. We'll just finish with it. Do you get more sins for doing something wrong in Ramadan? Okay, who thinks, just generally from the brothers sitting in the room, who thinks you get more sin for doing something wrong in Ramadan? Who thinks you don't? Both of you have a portion of the answer. The answer is a sin is not multiplied, meaning that a sin that you do in Ramadan is a sin that you do outside of Ramadan in terms of the quantity, the number of it. It doesn't get, when your good deeds get multiplied, muda'afatul ajr, your good deeds get multiplied, your sins never get multiplied. فَسَيِّئَةٌ, one sayyiyah, mithluha, like the sin that you did, that's what you get. However, the size of that sin, the severity of it, no doubt, a sin that you do in a time of righteousness is more severe in the sight of Allah than a sin that you do outside of that time. So the issue of a person sinning, for example, in the daytime might not be the same as them sinning in the night. But sinning in Ramadan and sinning outside of Ramadan, in terms of how severe that sin is in the sight of Allah. And we talked about in the khutbah, the shaitan is chained up. The doors of Jahannam are locked. For you to be doing a major, major evil in that time, what does that say about you as a person and your heart? So there's no doubt that in terms of severity, it looks worse in terms of doing it. But actually the quantity of the sin, you get one sin for a sin that you commit. But we don't say that because Maghrib came, curse and lie. And that's why we see, subhanAllah, some people, even when it comes to the things, and it's worth noting from the things that take away from the siyam, and we mentioned it to be honest, but it's worth highlighting it, which is another al-muharram, looking at that which is haram. And the reason this comes in specifically is, first of all, because of the fact that it leads to what breaks the fast. That's one thing. But there's more than that. That so many times we allow ourselves, there are two things we generally allow ourselves to transgress a lot in. There are two things we allow ourselves to transgress a lot in. And that is the eye and the tongue. And that's because the eye and the tongue are relatively easy to disobey Allah with them. Yeah, killing a person is not laysa bil hayyin, yani. It's not something that's easy for a person to stab another person, kill another person. Like to look at something and look away. And to hear something and then close your ears. To say something, you feel like I didn't do anything. Like it can be very severe in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you have to guard your head and everything that's in it. Yani your head is the problem here. Your head, which is your eyes, your ears, and your tongue. That's what you have to guard. That's where your big problem will come in Ramadan. In terms of the ease of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it comes here. From the eyes, the ears, and the tongue. So if a person guards their tongue from what would displease Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that includes speaking about Allah without knowledge, which we can add to qawl az-zur, false testimony, speaking about Allah without knowledge. If we can guard our tongue, we can guard our eyes from looking at that which is haram. It includes the TV and the movies and all that stuff that people do. Like we want to stop it in the night time and the daytime as well. Not like the people say, after Taraweeh, I come home and for a lot of people, the culture is movie night. As-salaha, that is the culture, especially in the Middle East. That's very, very common. You come back from Taraweeh, you put the soap operas on, the whole night, all of the time of the qiyam. You're watching what is haram, listening to what is haram. If you can protect this in the daytime and the nighttime of Ramadan, you did a lot towards guarding your fast from what takes away from it. I think that's a good place for us to stop. Any quick questions on fasting, fiqh of fasting, issues that we didn't cover, things people wanted to know about, we can just take it quickly, inshallah ta'ala. We try, if Allah makes it easy, we'd like to release these videos today for people to watch, or tomorrow morning, inshallah ta'ala. But did we have any last questions?
Yeah, basically, when you mentioned, Shaykh, it takes away from fasting, but the fast counts as fast. Does that mean you won't be questioned if there's judgment, like as you missed that fast?
It means you separate them. It means that the fast, you will not be punished for missing a fast, but you'll be questioned and potentially punished over the sin that you did. But it will not be said to you, you didn't fast that day. And you're fast. So there's a lot of times that happens. It's an important distinction. Like for example in Hajj, someone who does Hajj without, for example, illegally, let's say. Like a lot of times the ulama, what do they say? They say, Hajjuhu tasihhu ma'al ithm. And his Hajj is valid. And he'll be said he made Hajj because he went around all the places and everything. But he'll be questioned about the sin that he did in doing it without the proper way and the proper paperwork and everything that he was supposed to do, and potentially endangering people on that journey. He'll be asked about that sin. But in terms of the actual Hajj, he did Hajj. So this happens a lot in Islam. Even in the Salah, there are things that take away from your Salah. Some people get a 10th of their Salah, 10% of the Salah. Some people get a quarter of the Salah, 25%. They prayed. It will not be said to them, you're kafir, you're a munafiq, you didn't pray. Like in their heart wasn't in the salah, so they didn't get the reward of it. So a lot of times in Islam, you separate between whether you're classed as missing the action or whether you could be potentially punished or questioned about what you did separately within it. Yeah. So this issue of fasad, really, it comes into the issue, the ulama speak about fasad. When is an action, yani when do we say that that action is, there's fasad in it, it's gone, like you've literally ruined your prayer. Like if you break your wudu in your prayer, then fasadat is salat. The salah is that's it. Yani fasida, there's no prayer at all. Like, and if you were not concentrating in your salah, and still you were praying but you were not concentrating, so here we say as-salatu tasih, your prayer is valid, but you didn't get the reward that you were supposed to get and should have got, and potentially did sins that you could be questioned for, aside from the fact that you actually are classed as praying. Does that make sense? Did you have a question?
Ustadh, with regards to that, what reduces the fast? So if somebody commits a sin during the night time, is the fast from the day taken away? The reward?
That's a good question. If somebody does a sin in the night time, it doesn't seem to me that it affects the fast, because it didn't take place in the time of the fast. So it doesn't seem to me that it takes away from the fast, because the person was not at that time sa'im, but they could be receive a stronger punishment or stronger consequences from the sin, because they did it at a time of virtue and a time when the people were obeying Allah. And likewise, by the way, you can get muda'afatul ajr by worshipping Allah in a time where people are disobeying Him. That's why there are rewards for people who worship Allah in a time where most people don't worship Allah. And that's why somebody could be and if you compare them to the Salaf, they did nothing, right? They don't even do 1%. But they could get a reward in the sight of Allah because of the fact that their little 1% that they did was at a time where most people were disbelieving and turning away, like that al-ibadah, yani fil harj, like worshipping Allah when there's like strife, civil strife, and people are dying in the streets, and someone is still praying on time and still doing the things they're supposed to be doing. They can be also, so you can be rewarded for worshipping Allah at a time when people are not, and you can also receive a greater punishment potentially for disobeying Allah at a time when people are. And from that is also the issue of وَالصَّلَاةُ فِي اللَّيْلِ وَصَلَاةٌ فِي اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٌ, praying at a time when everyone's asleep. All of these things come under that, the general idea. But it doesn't affect his siyam because he wasn't fasting at the time he did it. Do we have any last quick questions? Yes, one more.
With regards to the dominant now, is there any link between that and not being questioned? So there are some who will go without questioning 70,000. So
Sahih.
dominant now.
To me, Allah knows best. There is no link between someone being from the utaqa min an-nar, the people saved from the fire, and the questioning. The people who are exempt from questioning are specific asnaf, groups of people that are mentioned. Now, the questioning is of two types: questioning of the grave, and then there is al-hisab yawm al-qiyamah. There is the hisab yawm al-qiyamah. And the hisab yawm al-qiyamah is of two types. So the questioning in the grave, there are people exempt from that. From the people who are exempt are the martyr, the person who dies on the battlefield, yani shaheed al-ma'rika, not the one who dies in a fire or a drowning or dies from hunger, but the one who dies on the battlefield, because the Prophet ﷺ said the swords clashing over his head are enough of a test. And if someone stayed firm when people were trying to kill them and they stayed with their feet firm in the ground, that person doesn't need to be asked if they believe in Allah. In the grave they will not be questioned. From the views is that some of the scholars strengthen the hadith is the one who dies Laylatul Jumu'ah, or in Jumu'ah, or the day, like the Thursday night or the Friday until Maghrib, or the person who dies from the disease of the stomach. Some of them strengthen it and some of them didn't. And from those who will not be questioned in the grave is the Anbiya and the Mursaleen, the prophets won't be questioned in their grave. And there are asnaf. Yawm al-Qiyamah, the questioning is of two types. There is al-ard and al-hisab, or al-munaqasha. The hisab, anyone who gets it will go to Jahannam, which is that Allah examines everything you did in minute detail down to the last second and the last word that you said. Every single one of them will go to Jahannam. Because if Allah examines what you did in every single moment that you did, there is no way you can be saved. There is nobody who can be saved. And that's why the Prophet said, "Man nuqisha hisabuhu halak," or kama qala, whoever's hisab will be taken to account in detail will be destroyed. One of the Sahaba, I think it was either Aisha or Hafsa, one of the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. She brought this to the Prophet. You see, they were very clever. She said, but what you said, O Messenger of Allah, how does it go with the statement of Allah? فَمَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِيَمِينِهِ, that whoever is given the book in his right hand, فَسَوْفَ يُحَاسَبُ, the ayah, فَسَوْفَ يُحَاسَبُ حِسَابًا يَسِيرًا, the one who will be given an easy hisab. She said, O Messenger of Allah, you said anyone who gets the hisab will go to hellfire, and Allah said an easy hisab. He said, ذَاكَ الْعَرْض, that's the presentation of your deeds. It's not the hisab I'm talking about. That is that your deeds are presented. This is the good you did, this is the bad you did. You can be asked about certain things you did, but without not every single individual thing will be examined one by one and questioned on each individual thing. Rather, you look at your deeds and Allah will ask you about from the things that you did, what did you do with it, and this, what did you do with it, in a general sense. That ard, the question is, will anyone be exempt from it? Because of the hadith of the 70,000, يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ وَلَا عَذَابٍ, without any hisab or any adab, are they exempt from the ard? Are they not going to be questioned about their deeds? One thing we know about them for certain is that they will go to Jannah without any detour. That means they won't be held back, they won't be punished, they won't be given from the punishments of the Qiyamah, they won't be given the punishments of the fire temporarily. That we know, that's the meaning of it. But are they exempt from the ard, or do they receive a presentation of their deeds which is in some way less than the others? Allah knows best, and it needs looking into. Because it seems that everyone has to have their deeds given to them. But بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ وَلَا عَذَابٍ, though what it seems here is it doesn't necessarily mean they won't be given their deeds to them, but that they won't be questioned in detail about them. But the issue needs looking into. So is that connected to the utaqa? No, the utaqa are those people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this person will not be from the people of the fire. In their name is written, this person will not be from the people of the fire. And they're freed from it. They have nothing to do with it, it has nothing to do with them. But they will cross it still they will cross the sirat. وَإِن مِّنكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا, every single one of you will go over it. But they will not be from its people, because their names are written that they're from the utaqa, from the people that Allah has saved from the fire, and Allah knows best. No, you can spend it.
If a woman breastfeeding and she wants to fast, but she's not sure if she's going to be able to do it, like she's probably worried about herself and the child, and if she says, okay, I want to try a few of them and see how it goes, is that allowed to do that? Or?
Yeah, she can try it and see how it goes. A breastfeeding lady, especially, she should try it. That's what she should do, because ultimately she doesn't know how it's going to affect her unless she knows herself. Like she says, look, I know I cannot, even if I go 2 hours without eating, I feel ill and I feel faint, and the baby starts crying and everything. But a woman who's generally in normal health, I think she should try to fast and see how it goes. And also bear in mind that she could consider even expressing the milk and giving it to the baby during the daytime, because if that works better, if she feels that the milk quality is not good when she's fasting, and she can manage to express the milk and then give it to the baby at that time. There's options, and let her try and see what she can do, and then if it doesn't work out, she has an excuse to break her fast if she wants to break it. No. Allah bless you. That's what Allah Azza wa Jal made easy for us to mention. Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Wassalatu wassalamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi.